Live. Welcome back to another episode of the As of Yet Unnamed podcast. You are listening to Faerhad Targaryen.
And Al Rogers.
Cool. So, if you joined us on our last episode, we were talking about the 2019 remake of Aladdin. It was a pretty fun movie for me. A scathing low, record low for Al Rogers, but that was
Don't
then.
waste your time watching live. Just don't waste your time.
Okay. We are here today to talk about one of my favorites from last year, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The first thing I will say is this is the one of the best adaptations of Spider-Man I have ever seen. I can't say it's the best Spider-Man movie. Actually, yeah, it's the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen, but not the best adaptation. But this was your choice, Al. So I wanted to ask you real quick, what made you?
I'm willing to say that. I'm willing to say that it's probably the best Spider-Man movie. Period.
Yes. Period. Yeah, as far as theatrical goes, I guess I haven't seen some of the TV Spider-Man movies, but this was, yeah. I was gonna say for me, it may not be the best Spider-Man adaptation I've ever seen, because I think that still goes to the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon, which was also made by Sony. And I haven't played the Spider-Man PS4 game. Have you?
I have not.
Yeah.
But
so,
I've seen clips of it. So barring any conversation on video games, I think that movie wise, the Spider Verse movie, they're onto something here.
yes, yeah. That's why, like, I was trying to make the distinction where I could say this is the best Spider-Man movie I've seen, but not necessarily the best Spider-Man adaptation. But this was good. This was a really, generally speaking, this was a good movie. It was a good cartoon, so like everybody can enjoy it. So what I wanted to ask you was, what made you want to have this just have this be? How did you decide on this as the next episode?
So I came across Spider-Verse movie just as Infinity War concluded with Avengers Endgame, and there were a lot of Marvel movies coming out at that time, and I was unable to catch Spider-Verse as it came out in theaters because Captain Marvel was out, Endgame, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
So it was as if there were two Spider-Man movies in theaters at the same time, and because I wasn't able to catch Into the Spider-Verse, I did see a couple of trailers, had an interesting artistic style,
Yeah.
and I wanted to watch it and be able to talk about it with you.
I liked it. Yeah, I liked the art style too. It was unique. It was not like a lot of the animated movies you see these days. So yeah, I liked the art style. I loved it. It was really cool. It just made the movie that much more enjoyable to have something fresh to just be visually looking at. So yeah. But before we go any further, just like all the other episodes, even though this movie is kind of old, I guess we should say, right, spoiler warning for anything to do related to Spider-Man and possibly other Spider-Man movies or shows, etc. Spider-Man stuff. Just clear up spoiler. So yeah,
Spoiler alert.
yes, this was the main character though was not Peter Parker. It was Miles Morales.
Yes. So yeah, go ahead and take us through the plot overview of the Spider-Verse.
Right. So Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse takes the perspective of a teenager, Miles Morales, who, just like Peter Parker, is struggling to live up to the expectations of life as a kid going into a kind of like, well, it's a little bit different though. Like here, his father is a police officer who doesn't like Spider-Man, the Peter Parker Spider-Man, because that character is already there. And in this movie, what's happening is Kingpin, the main villain of the show here, is trying to. What we end up finding out basically is he's trying to get his family back because they died, and he's trying to go into a different dimension, get his mother and father back. I mean, not mother and father, wife and son back, and Spider-Man is trying to stop him because this could just cause a whole lot of chaos for all dimensions that are involved. Miles Morales catches up with him and tries to help him, but then Peter Parker ends up dying. But in the collision of it all, Miles Morales gets the Spider-Man powers. I don't remember if was he bitten by a spider?
He was.
Yeah. So
So there's a scene where he's in the subway tunnel, um, and as he's doing this art mural, a spider, very weird looking spider with neon blue legs,
another radioactive
crawls.
spider. Yeah.
Right. Well, they don't mention it being radioactive. You can't really assume it's radioactive, but it's sure for. I guess that's pretty typical of the Spider-Man universes. Is that it's typically a radioactive spider crawls up his legs, and just as he's finishing this mural, that interestingly enough says no expectations. He gets bitten, and that is the start of him becoming a Spider-Man.
And he sees Spider-Man die. He was with Spider-Man when he died, I'm pretty sure, too, right? So he had to watch the previous Spider-Man die while he's becoming a new one. And then in the mixture of all of this, another Spider-Man from another universe crashes into his through all this mixture. And then a lot of the movie is them two bonding, him, Peter B. Parker teaching him the ropes of being Spider-Man and also dealing with the chaos of being in another whole universe. So the one cool thing about this, just multiverses in general, is this is opening up a whole lot of different possibilities. A lot of different theories have been going around about what people can do with universes and multiverses. But this movie was a pretty big landmark in that direction in general, in my opinion. Like one cool thing, just talking about what this movie has achieved. This is the first cartoon movie to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature that hasn't been like a Disney or Pixar film. So in that sense, it kind of made history for those who are like into knowing about Academy Awards and stuff. You know what I mean?
I was not aware of that. Yeah. Okay. And why is that a big deal? Is it just because it's never been done by
anybody other than Disney or Pixar? So it's interesting to see another movie studio like get break that wheel, essentially, because it's always like most animated movies people know about in general are probably Disney movies or Pixar movies. So that's not true. There are other studios that do it, but the ones that win most of the awards are the Disney movies. So it's interesting now that Sony won this movie because just like Venom, and I'm not sure if you've seen Venom, this may be based on a Marvel character, but Sony basically handled all the ropes of this, not Disney, who does most of the other movies, Marvel movies. So this was an independent thing of Sony's, and yeah, I think it broke a lot of good ground. And
well, I think when you look at the fact that those are two major studios that have the talent captured within their production, it makes sense that Disney and Pixar consistently win these awards because who else is competing with them?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's true. And anybody and everybody that does compete, they make good movies, but don't always nearly get the same attention as the Disney movies do. And this one did. So, one really cool thing about this, having a theatrical Spider-Man movie, even though it is animated, was Miles Morales. This is the first, well, if you remember in Spider-Man Homecoming, there was a character who was played by Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, who played the uncle of Miles Morales. I don't know if he was mentioned by name, but they introduced Miles Morales in the MCU as well. This movie does not take place in the MCU, but in a way it's the first Spider-Man movie that featured a different Spider-Man as the protagonist, in this case being Miles Morales. Even though Peter Parker is still a very important character, one of the main characters, I think Miles Morales is the main character.
He is.
Right.
He is, and the movie is structured in that way, as in um, it they very early on sacrifice the Peter Parker of Miles's
Universe,
universe,
yeah.
in order to make way for this new Spider-Man, um, who he becomes, and then he assumes the responsibilities of being that universe's Spider-Man at the end of the film. But he has a very interesting background. So it's never 100% confirmed what Miles's background is, but there are subtle things that point to it.
So according
So
to, I just want to stop you real quick just to let
yeah,
you know. According to Wikipedia, Shamik Moore plays Miles Morales, an intelligent yet rebellious teenager of African American and Puerto Rican descent, etc., etc. So they do, I guess, officially confirm that he's half Puerto Rican and half African American as far as his heritage goes. If that's what you meant.
yeah, no, that's where I was going with it.
Okay.
What are your thoughts about the choice of Miles's background?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to ask you about that too because I know, considering your culture as well, um, I knew about Miles Morales before this movie came out, and I was really excited to see how this movie would be. Just like with Black Panther last year, which was one of the first really high budget superhero movies with a black or brown person as superhero as the main character. So I liked it. I liked it a lot, and I think it brought an interesting dynamic. And I wanted to ask you about it too. So how did you feel about them doing like a brown Spider-Man, a black and brown Spider-Man as a main character, alongside
Yeah,
the also coexisting Peter Parker character?
yeah. So for me, it was nice. So I'm Dominican Puerto Rican. So yeah, it was nice to see some representation up on the silver screen. Um, so him walking down there was one scene where he's leaving his house and he's on his way to school and he's tagging things everywhere and he's high fiving everyone and he's walking around
I
in
love that.
his
Yeah, I remember that.
uh,
That's cool.
in his Jordans. It was nice. I could relate to it. It was very much like that growing up in the Bronx, and him being in New York City, in Brooklyn, it's like wow, I can absolutely relate, and um, it's nice seeing a Spider-Man that I could relate to. But I think Stan Lee put it best in one of his appearances is that um, anyone could be Spider-Man, anyone can, and that that him being so relatable to me
Yes.
really solidified that for me.
Yeah. It was relatable for me too, just to see a more diverse Spider-Man, like a brown Spider-Man. It was just it was refreshing for me to see that as well. So, but this movie is even like very interesting in the fact that they mix it up with a whole lot of different Spider-Man characters. Well, Spider characters, I should say, because there's Gwen Stacy, played by Hailey Steinfeld. There's also Peter Porker, aka Spider Ham, played by John Mulaney. And then there's Penny Parker, I don't know if I'm saying that right, played by Kimiko Glenn. And then Spider-Man Noir, who, like, it was a Spider-Man dressed in all black clothes with like a black hat on, played by Nicolas Cage. So there was a total of one, two, three, four, five, six, a team of six Spider people, I think. So um, let me know if I'm missing any. So Miles Morales, Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, Peter Porker, Penny Parker, and Spider-Man Noir. Am I missing any?
I think that's all of them.
Yeah. All right. So funny, like these are all very interesting characters in and of themselves. My question to you is, who was your favorite out of all of them?
Uh, that's a tough one. It deadlocked between Gwen and Miles.
Yeah.
Um, the not so much Peter. Peter just came off as a recovering loser, and
That's exactly, yeah, that's exactly,
but that's what they were trying to go for. But Miles for all the reasons mentioned previously. Gwen, the costume for the the Gwen Spider-Man, it's a pretty badass
Spider
color
Woman, yeah.
scheme.
Yeah, Gwen
And
Stacy goes by Spider Woman, I guess.
does she? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just her character. She's a very strong female character, and I loved it.
Yeah. I love them both a lot too, and I think it just comes down to them two for me as well. I might just go with Miles. Yeah, I really love Miles Morales Spider-Man, and I'm excited to see what else happens from here. So Kingpin was the main villain. So it's interesting to me because I know Kingpin was also a villain in the Daredevil series on Netflix, which was supposed to be in the MCU, and all that kind of fell apart. But yeah, he's also the villain here. He's also the villain in the PS4 game, and he was trying to, like, the whole story revolved around him trying to bring back his family. But if he did that, then wouldn't there also be a Kingpin in that universe who would notice that his family is gone and would try to get them back? You know what I mean? Like, if the villain succeeded in what he was trying to accomplish.
I didn't think about that, but what's interesting about the Kingpin story arc is that he he loses his family twice. He loses
Uh,
family the same way twice. So the first time he loses family, it's because he is attacking Spider-Man, and his family walks in on him actively trying to kill Spider-Man, and so they see him as a monster and they run away. And then again, once he's able to bring them back into his universe, so his scheme works shortly. He is in a fist fight with Spider-Man, and again, his family sees him trying to kill Spider-Man,
yeah,
and he never recognizes himself as a true villain, and that his family saw him for what he was, that he was a monster, and that
yeah,
they needed to get away from him. And that's ultimately what led to him losing his family, not Spider-Man.
yeah,
And yet he continued to blame Spider-Man through it. And so there was this absolute lack of self-awareness by Kingpin, and it's kind of a sad story of a man with a lot of power and no
yeah,
self-awareness.
yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I think you broke that down pretty well. So, but as Kingpin in general, yeah, as a villain in general of Spider-Man's, I think he's one of my favorite villains. They also had, I think they had,
Now, do you say that because you've seen other iterations of him on Daredevil or in other media, or
yeah.
do you say that just because of how he was presented in the Spider Verse movie?
So I grew up watching the Spider-Man animated the '90s series. I think it started in '94, and the Kingpin Wilson Fisk was a recurring character there. So that's where I first was introduced to the Kingpin villain in the Spider-Man universe. And then later on after that there was a Daredevil movie that came out, and then there was a Daredevil TV show. So yeah, he's also a villain of Daredevil. So what I was hoping for to see in the MCU was Spider-Man and Daredevil teaming up to go against Kingpin. But yeah, with all those iterations, he is, I guess, one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. But in this movie, there are a few different villains. There's a Tombstone who is around for a little while. I think there are a few scenes there, and then there's also a Doc Ock, Olivia Octavius. So they changed this character from a man to a woman. So Olivia Octavius is, unless she's like the daughter of the original, who is basically Doc Ock, who works for Kingpin and catches the Spider Men, Miles and Peter, as they're trying to go into the laboratory to, I guess, retrieve something, right? And the Doc Ock is there.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you might have missed a line, but she is a daughter of
Oh, okay, yeah,
Doctor Octavius.
got it.
Um, it's mentioned very briefly in
Got it.
Peter
Okay.
Parker as he's trying to seduce her with his sweatpants on. He realizes what her last name is
Yes.
and makes that connection. But she is a daughter
Got
of
it. Okay. Yeah.
Dr. Octavius. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So on that, there were a couple of subtle changes here and there, and a lot of cross references. Were you able to catch any Easter eggs throughout the film?
I was actually, me being a big Weekend EXO fan, I actually noticed some Weekend Easter eggs, which I think only other like Weekend fans might be able to recognize.
Okay. I did not recognize
Okay.
a single one,
Well,
so
I'll I'll I mean I could show it to you like if I like showed you a picture of the Easter egg. So there was a
sure.
poster on Times Square, right? In Miles's
Okay.
Times Square saying it said Kissland with the Weekend on it. However, it was Starboy artwork with Kissland as the title. So he had a previous album that was Kissland, but that was way back before Starboy came out. So he was just mixing up album covers with album names, which kept up basically of the alternate universe theme of the movie. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
that's one Easter egg I noticed. I bet you probably noticed some too.
Yeah. So the and this one here isn't subtle at all, but um, as Miles is becoming Spider-Man. So this is after he gets bitten by the spider. He goes back to his dorm, and a lot of the comic book covers in the film um, are of actual Spider-Man comics.
Oh, that's cool.
Everything about those comic book covers is accurate to a real life comic book. So this is the movie a Spider-Man movie within a Spider-Man universe
Yeah.
calling on a real life Spider-Man
Yeah.
illustrations.
Yeah.
And the covers are very accurate. They list out all of the actual illustrators and authors of those comic books, just as those covers exist in real life. Um, the the sneakers, of course, that Miles wear those are real sneakers. So there's a lot of Nike product placement there.
Nice.
Um, yeah. Um, yeah. How about yourself? Did you catch anything else?
So there is one other thing I definitely have to watch the movie again, but I think one thing I also heard about was in so Aunt May, right? In the Miles Morales universe, Aunt May, who lost her nephew Peter Parker, she had a or she knew about Peter's secret lair, right, of Spider-Man costumes or whatever.
Okay.
And I think someone said or someone noticed that they included the PS4 Spider-Man outfit, which implies that the PS4 Spider-Man video game universe is one of the Spider-Verses or multiverses of the Spider-Verse movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But that's the interesting thing, right? Because once you start looking at the multiverse of Spider-Man, there is no limit.
Yeah.
There is no limit. Um, and the movie itself calls on the dance scene of Spider-Man 3, the actual
Yes.
Spider-Man 3
Yeah.
of oh yeah, Spider-Man's walking down somewhere in Manhattan, and he's got these silly dance moves as Venom is trying to consume Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, but that's the beauty of a movie like Spider Verse in that it doesn't have any bounds. It can do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
Hell, it even includes uh, 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 Peter Porker or Spider Ham,
Yeah.
and that's very left field. But it can do that
Yeah.
because it's establishing that there are an infinite number of universes, and each universe has its own version of a Spider-Man.
Yes.
Um, the
Yes.
sky's the limit with the creativity they can go there.
I think at one point Marvel created like a South Asian Indian Peter Parker too. So if there's like a sequel or if there's going to be a spin-off of this, it would be cool to me if they also included that brown Spider-Man as well. But in terms
Yeah.
of a multiverse in general, if you think about it, the Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of does that too with Avengers Endgame, how they go back in time and do all these different things. They kind of created universes that way too, right? So the MCU is kind of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse as well too. Maybe not as much freedom as the Spider Verse, but it's similar in that regard, just due to time
Well,
travel.
well, now they can absolutely go that way because they've established that there is a multiverse.
Yeah,
And if you look at, and this is spoilers for Avengers Endgame,
Endgame,
when the Hulk is talking um, to that monk lady, and
the
she's
Ancient One.
showing him all these different possibilities. Um, it's established there's an infinite number of universes, and there are some where these characters are still alive. So Marvel now has the flexibility to tap into any of those stories, old and new, and continue making films off of it.
So, did you see Doctor Strange before you saw Avengers Infinity War and Endgame? Because I think they may have hinted at a multiverse as early as that movie.
I did see Doctor Strange.
Okay.
I don't recall them tapping into a multiverse discussion during it, but it has been a while.
So, going back to Spider-Verse, I wanted
Yeah.
to talk to you about another kind of important villain that was ending up working for Kingpin. This is Mahershala Ali, who played Aaron Davis, also known as the Prowler. This was Miles's uncle. You know, he had a really good relationship with his uncle, right? But then it turns out once he's Spider-Man and his uncle is Prowler, like masked as Prowler, it's revealed that that was his uncle, and his uncle's going after Spider-Man, which is his nephew. There was that
Right.
scene towards the end with Kingpin. You know which scene I'm talking about?
Yep.
So
I can relate. Yeah.
that can I feel like that was a really huge emotional blow for both of those characters, you know, because I think um
So let me ask you this: did you see that coming? As you're watching the film, did you see it coming?
kind of, yeah,
Kind of.
yeah,
So I mean, in this multiverse of Spider-Mans, everyone has their different loss, right?
yeah.
Um, so Spider-Man lost Uncle Ben,
Mm-hmm.
and Miles lost his uncle.
Yes.
So, um, I kind of saw that coming, um, but then if you run through all the different characters, like Gwen lost her best friend, who happened to be Peter Parker. So I'm not sure if you noticed that towards the end of the film, Peter or alternate universe Peter Parker
Yeah.
was trying to stay in this universe so he could, I think, you know, jump right back into Mary Jane's life.
Mm.
Um, but Gwen, she when she sees Spider-Man, what she's really seeing is her best friend,
Okay.
because that's just non-radioactive um, best friend from my universe, um, who she tried saving and she had a loss there.
Okay.
So yeah, it was very interesting to see how those dynamics played out.
You know, now that I think about it, yeah, there are so many dynamics to go in with all these different characters and these spider people in general, but I feel like something like that could be done with almost, well, not almost all, but a lot of comic book characters in general, both DC and Marvel. I feel like they have so many versions of stories for their characters that a movie like this could be done with other superhero characters, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they could,
But
and that's really when you look at comic books as a medium. Um, there are many variations to the origin stories of these characters, um, and that's how
yeah,
artists and comic book authors are able to alter those stories and continue to sell slight variations on it.
That's exactly, yeah, that's how it has been for. But one of the uh, one of the superhero characters that I feel like has a lot of different cool stories in that regard is Spider-Man. So it makes a lot of sense to have Spider-Man have his movie as alternate universes. I don't think I've ever seen a superhero movie that did that before Spider-Man having like a whole bunch of different versions of the character together like this. This is definitely
Yeah.
a lot of variety with Spider-Man here. But yeah, this was
So so where do you see this movie going? Do you think there's a future in turning this movie into several other new series, or do you see this spiraling into um, any maybe something within the MCU, or do you think this will be just a one of?
So yeah, what I was gonna say was this was a pretty happy ending, I guess, in a way. I mean, yeah, I think it could be like seen as bittersweet or happy. The ending of this movie, the way I see it, this is in terms of tying it into the MCU. This is a Sony movie, not a Disney movie per se. So I guess Sony has final say in whatever goes on with any future of like any sequels or whatever, any connections with this movie. So I think Marvel probably liked it too. I don't know if Marvel had a good eye on Venom, but Marvel probably saw highly in the Spider-Verse movie. And if there were any, I guess, crossovers with the MCU, it would be with Tom Holland's Spider-Man character. They could, I guess, if they wanted to bring back the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield characters too, because, like you said, there's no limit. They could, if they wanted to do something like that. Although they'd have to probably, I don't know, there may be some Hollywood politics involved in all that, but even a direct sequel, I think, would be another really interesting story. Just with the Miles Morales character again, I think even a direct sequel and having a movie about Gwen Stacy would also be cool. There are so many different ways they can go with this, even like going straight ahead with a direct sequel too. But what do you think about a potential future?
I think I think Spider Ham has tremendous potential. I think people would just eat that movie up.
I think Spider Ham could have a TV show too.
Yeah,
I feel like he would be a good
yeah.
character to have his own Spider Ham TV show. You know what I mean?
Have his own series on Netflix,
Yeah,
something silly like that. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
very relatable. And of course, I think the Nicolas Cage noir Spider-Man was also pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, uh, yeah, even that universe has a lot of potential.
So
Um,
yeah, that's one thing. Like I didn't know about the Spider-Man noir character before this movie. I mean, I may have known about him, but not that much. I didn't know he was another Peter Parker. I thought it was going to be like a different character who became Spider-Man. You know what I mean? I didn't know it was another Peter Parker in another universe. Because this Spider-Man is pretty different. Did he ever use like I'm drawing a blank? Did he ever use actual webbing in the Spider-Verse movie?
he swung around.
Okay, so
He got to the buildings somehow.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Okay, so
but
then he
now that you mention it, I don't recall him actually doing any swinging, but he moved around somehow.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I had to actually think about it. But remember when the first scene where Peter Parker was deciding that Miles was not ready to be a Spider-Man yet, so they all the other Spider people like tie him up with webbing in his room, and then they all swing away. They all swing away together. So in that scene, Spider-Man Noir definitely used webbing because they were all swinging away together. You remember the scene I'm
Well,
talking about?
well, they don't swing away. They're hanging out outside the window during that scene.
And then they tie him up and
They
then
they
leave.
were no, they tie him up and then it looks like
Webbing.
they jump out the window and swing away, but they're all just um, hanging out outside the window, eavesdropping into the conversation
Oh,
between Miles and Peter Parker.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, if that's the case, then I guess Spider-Man More didn't actually ever swing, but that's My whole point with that was when they were introducing him, I didn't know. I wasn't expecting him to be another Peter Parker, but he was a cool character. So I agree with you too that they can do a lot of things with the Spider-Man Noir character as well. Um, it would also be cool if they did, I guess, in the future, a Sinister Six, because Sony's been trying to do a Sinister Six movie for a while. It'd be cool if they had, because there were six Spider-Men here, I mean, Spider People here, and if you have them versing a team of six villains at the same time, that could potentially be a pretty cool thing to look at too. Almost as kind of like, I guess, an Avengers movie when you have all those characters. Well, not really Avengers. Something like that only happened, I think, in the Civil War movie, right, where you had superheroes versus other superheroes.
Yeah. No. Um. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right.
So, yeah, a Sinister Six going along with as a sequel or spin-off with this would also be cool. We probably will see some other iteration of Sinister Six in general in a Spider-Man movie, one way or another, you know. But
Yeah.
since we
So
are
so help me out there. Sinister Six.
So Sinister Six is in in Spider-Man history, I guess, in the comics and in TV shows, is just a team up of several different Spider-Man villains. So say Venom teams up with Doctor
Okay.
Octopus, teams up with the Lizard, who teams up with Green Goblin,
Got it.
who is headed by Kingpin as the leader. That's called. It's not always the same six villains, but the team of six versus Spider-Man has been regarded as the Sinister Six.
Got it.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I was going to say, since we are heading towards the end of this podcast, I have we could go on and on talking about this movie. It's mostly good things. I liked this movie a lot. Like I said in the beginning, best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. One of the best Spider-Man iterations I've ever seen. I haven't really liked any particular Spider-Man portrayal in a movie. I didn't love Tobey Maguire. I loved some of those movies, but I didn't really love him as Peter Parker or Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. And I actually don't think Tom Holland. Tom Holland is a good actor, but he doesn't really come off as Peter Parker to me. That's all I'm saying in that regard. So
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
yeah,
Yeah. But his story arc is good, but I still can't see him
yeah,
as really Spider-Man.
yeah. Same here,
And
unfortunately.
he feels like a fake.
I probably will still go see Spider-Man Far From Home though. That's probably still gonna happen. I went and saw Venom too, and I went to go see this. So yeah, just talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This is tough for me, but as far as ratings go, I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. This was great. I definitely recommend
Huh.
this one. It's hard to not want to see it like again and again. What about you,
Yeah.
Al?
So I think I'm also going to rate this movie a 9 out of 10.
Oh,
I think there were a lot of good things with this movie. The artistic style being one of them. The diversity of the characters in the film. Um, the scene choices. There were just every scene on this movie absolutely beautiful. You could stop the movie anywhere and look at it, and it was like looking at a graphic novel. There, you could tell there was a lot of love poured into this movie as the artists were rendering each scene. Um, and of course, the story arc. The movie does feel like it's a little short, but as far as a Spider-Man movie goes, this is going to be a tough one to beat.
yes, I agree with you there. I mean, this movie was rated either G or PG. Honestly, I don't remember. It may have been rated PG-13, but basically, this was a movie that older Spider-Man fans and younger ones can all enjoy too. I mean, that's what all the Spider-Man movies are for, so that argument doesn't even really matter. But yeah, I agree with you there too. The art direction and style was really cool, really appealing, almost trippy at times. And I just love that they had a few weekend Easter eggs there too. I wasn't expecting that, and that was pretty cool as well. So yeah, I think this is the second time we may have actually agreed, or just given the same score. I think for Lo Spietato, aka Ruthless, we both gave it a 6 too. So yeah, nine. This was borderline 10 for me. I'm not gonna lie. This was really, really good. But um, what I wanted
Well,
to, yes, go ahead.
well, if you use decimals in there, you're sitting at like a 9.7. I'm sitting at a low nine,
No
like
nine.
maybe actual nine.
Okay,
So
9.0 you mean? Got it. All right. Well, um, as far as good movies, well, just good storytelling goes, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what I want for next episode, episode 8. It's another Netflix series called When They See Us. And
when they see us.
yes, this was also based on a true story, like Extremely Wicked, another Netflix original starring Zac Efron as Ted Bundy. So this is another Netflix it's a series that is, yeah, based on a true story. Um,
So, are we going to cover the whole series? Are we going to only cover a couple of episodes in the series?
well,
What are you thinking?
I've already seen all 4 episodes, so depending on how invested you get into after watching the first episode, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's 4 episodes. I think all of them may be either an hour or over an hour long. So it's almost like its own movie each. So I'll leave it up to you how you feel.
Okay. Well, it is your choice on the the next um, series or movie that we cover. So if you want to cover that series, then we'll I'll watch all four and we can talk at length from episode 1 through episode 4.
Cool, cool. Yeah, sounds good to me. All right. Well, I guess at this point, I just want to say again, thank you all for listening and joining in on us while we talk over 40 minutes about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Great movie. Go check it out if you haven't seen it already. It's been out for a while, and I think Al, you mentioned how it's on Netflix. So,
It
um,
is. Yeah, it's now on Netflix. So take advantage of it while it's still out there.
definitely,
It won't cost you any more, and I think you'll highly enjoy it.
yes, I agree. So, other than that, for now, y'all, thank you so much for listening to us, and as always, take care.
Peace.